This week on Quality Digest Live, getting executives aligned with enterprise quality management.
That's right. Plus, do you know the 7 stages of innovation grief? Well, you'll find out when we come back. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for June 10th, 2016. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher, Mike Richmond. Well, the American Customer Satisfaction Index, also known as the ACSI, came out with a new report last week, and it demonstrates some pretty good news for the telecommunications sector. Subscription television service, internet service providers, fixed line telephone service, wireless telephone service, and cell phone manufacturers are the individual sectors that make up the telecommunications industry in this ACSI report. And the report covering the industry was conducted during the first quarter of 2016, and more than 12,000 customers were surveyed. So a pretty complete report here. The result showed a 1.9 point gain to a net score of 70.1 for the telecommunications industry as a whole. Now, I think it's important to note for all of us to remember now that the ACSI uses a 100-point scale for all of its reports. So 70.1% was the number that the entire telecommunications industry achieved. The individual sectors, I think, showed some pretty interesting results, and maybe we can kind of go through these one by one here. Subscription television service scored a very poor score of 65 overall, with fiber optic provider Verizon Fios leading the pack with a score of 70. Cable providers bring up the rear, with Mediacom posting a score of 54.
Ouch.
Now, that's actually the lowest of any single company anywhere in the ACSI universe. So that's
54 is pretty
that's impressive. You don't see a lot of 50s in the ACSI, and the 54 in particular is pretty darn low. Well, the internet service providers as a whole had a score of 64, and that's the lowest ACSI score for any industry as a whole. So we're seeing a lot of kind of repeat things here. Not great scores for these companies.
This sounds like the setup for a Louis C.K. thing. It's like, my internet, I'm only getting 20 megabit download.
Yeah, something that 5 years ago you never even knew
on
it
dial-up
could exist.
modem, yeah.
Well, Verizon Fios again was in the lead here. They had a score of 73, and Comcast at 59, another 50. That score there was the notable trailing company. Fixed line telephone service posted an overall industry score of 70, which actually looks better than it is because vast numbers of previously dissatisfied customers simply abandoned their landlines in the last couple of years altogether. Vonage, a voice over internet provider, had a rather impressive score of actually 78 here in this.
Yeah, one of the early entries into the VoIP. Yep.
Very, very, very good score for them. The wireless telephone service sector saw a score of 71, led by T-Mobile at 74. Sprint was the lowest at 70. So you can see obviously,
range there.
Very tightly bunched crowd without a lot of separation there, which makes sense. And finally, cell phone manufacturers are doing really, really well at pleasing their customers. They had an impressive overall score of 79. Apple at 80 and Samsung at 79 are in a tight race for the customer lead within that sector, and that makes sense too. There's so much innovation in that sector. We're going to talk about innovation later in the show, but so much innovation in that sector in terms of coming up with new bells and whistles.
Yeah, cell phone. That's one of those. It's like my computer. It actually has a phone also.
It's a phone.
It's like
you can make calls. That's right. Pretty cool. Well, for more information, be sure to check out the story link right below the video player screen right down there, or visit online at theacsI.org.
My cell phone is worthless for making phone calls, but it has a lot of really cool apps on it.
It's like a computer on your hip. It's great.
Right. All right. Well, some things never change.
Yep.
Like for some, for those of you who work in the quality industry, it's that idea that quality guys are just police, looking forward to find us doing something wrong. Or like the guys in the suits, the ones up there in the C-suite, who view quality as some necessary evil that doesn't really contribute to the bottom line, but you got to have a quality control department, so that's those guys. Yep. So how do you change those attitudes? And particularly, how do you change those attitudes about quality as a non-value adding function? How do you change that attitude at the top? Well, that was the subject of the article, Breaking into the Boardroom, Making the Business Case for Executive Sponsorship of Quality, written by our next guest, Dan Jacob. Dan is a research analyst with LNS Research, which provides research and marketing information on the business processes and technology capabilities that you need for achieving operational excellence. Dan is joining us right now via Skype. Hi, Dan.
Hi, gentlemen. How you doing this morning?
Oh, pretty good.
Good. How are you?
All right. So, seriously, from your research, are there really still companies out there that look at quality as a non-value adding police function? And maybe if not at the C level, is that still the impression maybe down on the shop floor still?
Yeah, so when we consulted our LNS quality management survey extensively. We used a lot of that data when we were generating the analysis for the research that we're going to be discussing next week and on this show. And one of the areas we track is top challenges in meeting quality objectives. And one of the top challenges out there at 34% of respondents is that quality is seen as a department versus a responsibility. So that idea has been there for a long time, and it's been, that has stayed consistently in the top 3 since we began that survey roughly 5 years ago. So would you gentlemen permit me a hockey analogy?
Oh boy.
Oh, here we go.
Go
so,
Sharks.
I was thinking of, all right, yeah, okay, there we go, right? So I'm a Pittsburgh guy, so the Penguins and the Sharks. I know it's the wrong show for this, but we're in the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and there was a game last night, and one of the things that occurred to me was that quality is very much like a hockey skill, not necessarily an individual player. We know that there's a it's a team. And quality needs to be cross-functional, but it's really a lot like a skill, like puck handling. Puck handling is a lot like quality in that it has an impact on both offense and defense. So it can provide a lot of value. We see that a lot in industry with organizations really differentiating themselves and gaining market share because of quality. And it also has an impact from a defense perspective on preventing defects from leaving the shop floor, for instance. Secondly, it's a cross-team skill. If you have an individual who is amazing at puck handling, that doesn't necessarily mean your team is going to be Stanley Cup material. You really, who's going to pass to, right? So you need to have this ability for the team to work together and really and have puck handling that drives goals and prevents defensive mistakes. And then finally, everyone knows that quality is very valuable, right? We know that. We know that it's a whole ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Just like that, puck handling is very important, but how do you prioritize it? There's a lot of things an organization is trying to accomplish, and at the C-suite level, they've got this challenge where, I want to prioritize things I know are important, like engineering and sales and manufacturing, and where does quality fit in with that overall picture? So it's this challenge of, looking at this thing that really has to, in order to be successful, engineering creates a digital product, manufacturing creates a physical product, service creates a product, sales generates revenue. Quality is really something that stripes across all of that, just like puck handling. So, how do you get that and get the right engagement from all the different teams to make sure that you've got quality as a pervasive responsibility?
Well, I think that's a great analogy, Dan. I mean, I think that many of our readers out there would love to cross-check some of their bosses. Our quality readers would love to get their boss in the corner and just anyway.
What's the Gordie Howe hat check?
He just died.
I know, but the Gordie Howe hat check is a goal, assist, and a fight.
That's right, Gordie Howe hat trick. All right, well let's get away from hockey for a minute. Let's get back to your article, because in your article, Dan, you say that for the quality function or the quality department to be made a priority by that C-suite, the onus is on the quality department to make its business case. But doesn't that really involve the quality folks understanding the language of the C-suite? I mean, how do they even get started in communicating that business case?
I think it's one of the biggest challenges we have as a profession, right? If you look at quality leaders, we do a great job. We understand quality really well. There's a lot of focus on processes and teams, and there's many important topics in quality management. So a lot of those topics are things that we focus on as quality leaders. But the idea of communicating to the C-suite is really a critical one that needs more focus, because you can take 2 paths to gaining cross-functional quality and really breaking out of the silo. One of them is to go on a peer-by-peer basis, work with the VP of engineering, VP of manufacturing, and so on. And when I talk to quality leaders out there in the field, and I've worked with them for a long time in different respects, that's something that takes years or decades to really gain that cross-functional quality and corporate quality. You need in order to really make a difference, you need to get the executives to help push and make a change for you in your organization. And so you need to begin by focusing on quality, not necessarily the quality department's objectives and focus, but start focusing from a cross-functional standpoint, and ideally at a strategic objective level. So tie your quality journey to what's strategically important to the company and drive the value from that. So focus on value, strategic objectives, and then build out the journey from that supports that that overall strategic objective and value.
Well, I mean, even if you do make a case to the C-suite, kind of pulling in everything that you said there, isn't there still also, as is very often the case, that the C-suite, the guys up there in the suits, well, we didn't come up with the idea, and therefore we're not going to trust what you're saying? I mean, it's kind of a variation of the not invented here. It didn't come from the brainiacs at the top. It came from you guys down where? What's that called? The quality department?
Right, exactly. Well put. I mean, that's definitely a challenge. So if you had an opportunity a couple months ago to talk to one of the board members of one of the big three, and they had gone through the organization that he's a board member of went through a major quality escape, and the CEO got engaged personally and helped solve that problem, and really championed a lot of changes, operational excellence improvement changes, because of that compelling event, this big negative compelling event that happened. She was involved, championed the changes in the organization. So one of my questions was, how do you take that lesson learned and translate that to other organizations? Because we don't want everyone to have to deal with those negative compelling events. Those negative and uncontrollable compelling events have a negative impact on, on the consumers, maybe on the environment, on the company, the shareholders, on employees, because a lot of times there's reductions in force that might occur if something's really severe. So there's all these impacts that has. You really want to focus on how do you get a positive and controlling compelling event. And so my focus was, how do you translate that knowledge? And it was, that wasn't something that was clear, right? So I didn't get a clear response. And I think when you look at, in general, that's been a challenge. You look at, a lot of organizations, an organization that's in a similar industry may have been burned by a problem that another company might face, but still you don't have that lesson learned. So you're left with a few options. One of them is, if you look at IT organizations, vendors, for instance, or consulting organizations, they do a great job with value engineering and understanding, going into a company and building out the business environment and understanding the processes and technology and people that are involved and the costs associated with that and how they might drive a change. But that sort of thing is very, on one hand, you've got this challenge where you can't translate between companies effectively because, again, it wasn't born, it wasn't made here. Secondly, that second approach is very tactical. It's something that you can identify a short-term roadmap, but it doesn't talk about the overall value of quality, and that's really was the focus of this research. And I think it's a contribution industry that we need, that you look at building out the value of quality management tied to strategic objectives with evidence to support that impact, and then also build out the frameworks and the elements that need to be considered, because to a certain extent, this is a problem that's something we're trying to get C-suite support and boardroom support for quality, but from an individual's perspective, from the quality group themselves, a lot of times there's less focus, not less focus, but a challenge with really opening up and changing the rule of quality within the organization and start looking cross-functional and corporate-wide. So there's some cultural need to occur from that perspective too. So we provide those frameworks to understand how to make those changes. And then finally, some of the underlying evidence. And I think that's one of the areas where having all these years of research and data and executive benchmarking, that gives us access to a number of different metrics. There were 12 metrics that we analyzed over, I think it was 46 best practices from a people, process, and technology standpoint. And we were to look at those and identify really which ones have the most impact, both from maybe in your short term when you're trying to make these initial improvements, and then also really pointing to and underlying the overall value of quality management as a whole.
Well, Dan, we don't want to give it all away. We're going to have a lot of that information and a lot more at a webinar that you're presenting next week. It's called Quality Management in the Boardroom: Building the Executive Business Case for EQMS. Quality Digest is hosting, so I'll be there, and Dan will be presenting this information and a whole lot more. That's next Thursday, June 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Dan Jacobs, lead quality research analyst with LNS Research. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Okay.
We'll see you on Thursday. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good stuff there. And yeah, all of you, make sure you look out for your email. We have an invite out to that webinar coming up soon. All right, well, our next article is called The 7 Stages of Innovation Grief, and it was written by a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Phillips, and it ran in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Well, we all know, I think, the 7 stages of grief. We've all, unfortunately, many of us have been through them. They are in order, generally, disbelief, denial, bargaining, guilt, anger, depression, and finally comes a sense of acceptance, and often that's accompanied by a sense of hope, as Phillips points out. Well, when you're an innovator, developing a project is kind of like going through these 7 stages, as he points out, but only in reverse, which is kind of an interesting little twist on it if you think about it. I mean, innovators generally start with a lot of hope. I mean, they come up with a project, they launch it, and they believe it's going to at least change the company, if not change the world. And unfortunately, generally, over the due course of time, they end up in disbelief about how that breakthrough idea that they had, that solution to solve the world's problems, gets overmanaged, constrained, and ultimately just outright neutered, and what comes out the other end of the machine isn't anything like what initially was idealized. Well, as a remedy to this sad state of affairs, which really, as Phillips points out, when you look at it, really can make times snuff that innovative fire right out of people that have it. In his second part of the article, he talks about the wisdom of one of the history's greatest strategic and tactical minds, actually, Napoleon Bonaparte. And he throws out 2 quotes that I thought both were really, really interesting for how to maybe correct this a little bit. The first one that Napoleon said was audacity, always audacity. And in other words, what that means is that you want to kind of dream big, right? You want to swing for the fences, you want to reach for the stars, you want to try to win. And to do that, you've got to take risks, and you got to do things that others maybe don't expect you to do. And if you're audacious about it and you have the confidence in yourself, you can many times achieve a lot more than you can by being a little more conservative in your reach. And the second one, which aligns with that, is another really interesting quote I thought was, if you go to take Vienna, which is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, I've never been to Vienna, but I'm sure it's a nice town. I'm sure if you want to go there, you should want to embrace it. And this one kind of means is that if you're going to have a goal, in other words, what he's saying is if you're going to go to basically conquer a big city like Vienna, do it. Don't just say you're going to do it and try and say, well, I tried. Do it. I mean, make sure that you do everything you can to make sure that your goals are aligned, that your outcomes are aligned with your goals, and you make them happen. I mean, it's not easy to make that happen, but you have to be able to at least try. And if you don't do that, well, you're going to tend to get off track. Well, I think the bottom line here that I took away from this is you want to keep the faith. You want to accept the inevitable ups and downs that come with the innovative process. And your innovations, if you do that, won't have to necessarily come to grief. And I thought that was
very good.
That's what I thought about that story.
Good on Napoleon.
good little piece.
I think when he said take Vienna, he didn't mean take in Vienna. He actually meant take Vienna.
Conquer Vienna.
Conquer Vienna. Yeah. And I think we're not just going to take it in.
He probably more meant Moscow. But anyway, it's all fine. All right. Well, we're going to move on now to our tech corner. Dirk's going to jump over there in a minute, and this one is with Dirk and Rob Bellinger. Rob again is our our expert who joins us from Olympus. This one is the Olympus CIX90 Technical Cleanliness Inspection System. And again, it's presented by Rob Mellinger, Product Application Manager for Olympus Industrial Microscope Division. So Dirk and Rob, take it away.
Right, thanks, Mike. Well, Rob, welcome,
Nice
welcome
to see
back
you
once
again.
again.
Yeah.
So this is a particle inspection, cleanliness inspection, looking for particles on what type of things?
Filter media
Oh, filters,
for this
okay.
system. So this is our cleanliness inspector, model CIX90. It's a new platform, new hardware platform compared to our old system. It's a fully hands-free system. There's no sliders or mechanisms that the user is going to have to interact with on the microscope hardware itself. So that automates the process even further. Another feature is a new illumination method. This allows the scan to capture 4 types of particles all in one scan, which is twice as fast as it used to be.
And just to be clear,
So-
these filters would come out like machining centers, that sort of thing, looking for debris and lubricants and oils and.
Typically, manufacturers are looking for quality assurance that the parts are clean after they've manufactured them. So metals or fibers or large particles don't clog like injector assemblies or hydraulic assemblies. So you're going to see a lot of automotive manufacturing, a lot of industrial manufacturing, but it could be even medical device parts, things that are going to be going into satellites as well. So a lot of space research and cleanliness is a very important factor for those, of course.
Sure.
So they're going to rinse fluid over the material they're manufacturing, capture it onto a filter media, and they want to quantify all of that data. They want to count the total particles, they want to size them, they want to know if they're metal, they want to know if they're reflecting fibers or just standard particles. So with the new illumination method, it's scanning. In one scan, it captures all that information, regular particles, fibers, reflecting particles, and reflecting fibers. So along with the new system is a whole new user interface as well. We have new software that they've streamlined and made very user-friendly, meant for any operator to walk up, pop on their filter assembly here on the stage, a new filter cap that locks down the filter, flattens it out for easy scanning capabilities. Then the operator is going to come right to this screen, and it's a nice touchscreen system now, so it makes it easy interface. They're going to hit run inspection, and this uses a very low mag lens to do a quick overview scan. So it says down here in the bottom right of our software screen, acquire overview image. So if they hit that, it's going to start doing an autofocus. So the Z is also automated on this, or the user doesn't have to go and try to focus on anything. After it does the autofocus, it acquires an overview scan. So this overview scan is used for a couple things, for them to make sure everything looks good as far as the sample surface of the filter, and to also take a look at where their flow-through areas, where the water actually went through or something on the filter paper. So that takes just a few seconds. The next step in the process is going to ask them for an inspection configuration. So this configuration is going to set the microscope up. It's going to set up the standard that they want to use. And if you look on the right here, it describes everything on the screen of what it's going to scan with magnification-wise, the standard they want to use. Even has a great area for them to type in a lot of descriptions.
Okay.
They might use different inspection methods, configurations for different parts. Different types of materials might have different requirements. So once they select what they have here, they simply hit next. It's going to select the right mag. As it's doing an autofocus here, it's refocusing the system. You can see on the right-hand side of our screen, it brings up a bunch of different sample ID fields. This is customizable by the user. Different fields, they might have serial numbers they want to track, part numbers, lot numbers. They're going to enter that information into these fields here. So one of the fields that's highlighted down here is a required field. This standard that we use requires the number of parts that we've washed the rinse fluid over.
And it's all configurable, I'm assuming.
These are configurable in the system configuration
Gotcha,
files, yeah.
okay.
So those, by selecting that, the fields might change for what they want to use for that part. And then once they have the fields filled in with what they want, they can even type in comments. They're going to come down here to inspection settings. So these settings can be sort of automated if you're running a same sample and it's always repeatable. These can just use auto functions. So they may or may not interface with these, but for the demo purpose, I want to show, the adjustment of thresholding As I adjust this, I want to make sure it's marking the particles that we want to detect. And this is a live image, so if I move around, you can see that the particles stay highlighted everywhere we go, so you can verify you're detecting properly. Again, that can be saved, and the configuration file is an auto function as well. The other couple steps are to set the scan paths. If they need to adjust the scan path, that's what this overview image was for here in the middle. So if they need to shift their scan path because their flow through area shifted a little bit, they can adjust that down here. Once they make all these adjustments, they're just going to hit Run Inspection. So now what it's going to do is go through and capture a few points of focus on the surface of the filter. This is to correct for not only tilt, but it can be set up to correct for waviness of the filter paper. Because sometimes they get dried and they kind of potato chip. So the system does this fully automated. It goes through and autofocuses at multiple points, and it's going to create a topographical map as it does the scan. So this takes a few seconds for it to capture those focus points. Once it's done, it'll start doing the automated scan. So that's what we're seeing here. In the sample overview image, this shows you the process of the scan as you're going through. You can even see if we have a view of the live stage scanning on the system as well.
Oh yeah, if we switch to the switch to the software shot. Okay.
So in here, you're going to see the live images flashing by just to show that it's detecting particles. If something was wrong, you'd see it right away. On the right-hand side, you're seeing your approvals. So in our standard, we said particles need to be separated into bins, 5 to 15 microns, 15 to 25 microns.
So it's counting them as it goes along.
That's those bins that you see here. Now, one of these bins is, now 2 have turned yellow. That's went over our maximum allowable amount of particles. So right away, the software is telling us in a live scan, this was not a good scan, which failed a couple of the bins. Once it's completed with the scan, you see it moved really quick. Again, that scan captured particles, reflecting particles, fibers, and reflecting fibers all in one scan. We can see our bins, our total counts here. This allows us to move around real quickly just to kind of get a view. If something didn't look right, we could just jump back to do a rescan. But if we're confident in our values here, we can move on to review the results. So under this selection,
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, another neat thing about the software, and for traceability, going back and looking at stuff later on, every single picture of every single particle is captured here as it did the entire scan over the filter paper.
And you could filter these by
right now
particle size, right?
Right now it's filtered by size. So if you select this one in the top, not only does it select which bin that it fell into down here, as far as its sizing, but it's going to move the stage. I don't know if we saw that quickly, but every one you click on, the stage will actually drive to those points.
Oh, so you could actually go and actually examine that particle.
You can, you can switch right here to live observation. So you can see that particle in live observation. So if I move the joystick around, you'll see the particle move on the image screen. Going back to our particle list, the only other thing that might be of use is if you wanted to see just those reflecting particles. Some customers are very concerned with their metal type particles. If they have any, it's a failure. Or they want to make sure that they're not a certain type. So you can actually drive to these particles as well. See them in the live observation. They're kind of a reflecting metal particle.
Shiny,
Yeah, so we call those reflecting particles. You can sort those as well. Once they review all of their results, they will want to take the next step and create a nice report. So at the end of the process up here, we create report. We can select from multiple different templates. You can have custom templates for different parts and have different requirements in the templates. These are just Word document templates. We can create either a Word document or a PDF document down here in the selections for output. Once we do that, we just hit Create Report. We assign a name to that report, and it's going to take all of that data, compile it into the document for us.
And that document can be a template that you create to select what kind of information you want in there?
That's correct. The template's going to, here we'll see in a second, it'll have your logo in the top, so you can adjust that. You can say all those fields that we entered at the beginning, those insert automatically if you want to show them in the report. So if you need to have your customer name or your part number showing right at the top, you can adjust this template to have it wherever you want. As you scroll down, page 2, we have it set up to show our bin classes again, all the different sizing of particles. and their total counts. And again, it shows you in here if it passed or failed, which bin. And then we show the top 10 largest particles and all of their measurement results for each particle. And down a little further, we have the top 10 largest particles in picture format. Again, this is a Word document, so you could save this out if you needed to email it off, or automatically it's saved into the data pool of the software. So if we go back and look at the software, we're done with our reports, we'll go home. You can see that later on, the important thing is qualifying all this data. And later on, if it failed in the field or something, a part that you manufactured, you could go back and look up that serial number and pull up all the results again. So we could show our results, go in here and select them one more time, and it brings up all those pictures again. You can also open the report. Everything is automatically saved and archived in the software, so that there's no user has to remember to save it. They forgot to save it. The data is just always there as soon as the scan completes.
Okay.
That's great for traceability for the customers. But that's the workflow. It's pretty simplified.
This is the CIX90, and I believe you said this is faster, quite a bit faster than previous versions, because you do everything in one pass, right?
That's correct. Our old system was, our filter inspector system required 2 sample scans. One scanned particles, and then another whole scan to do just the reflecting stuff. And the user had to interface with the hardware. They used to have to slide in like a polarizer system and adjust to counteract reflecting particles, and then pull that out at the second scan. So this fully automates that, takes the human element out of having to slide sliders in, and it does it all in one scan, so it's really twice as fast.
All right, so the CIX90 cleanliness inspection
Inspector.
system. All
That's
right.
correct.
From Olympus. Rob, thanks once again
thanks
for
again,
joining
Dirk.
us.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
Mike,
problem.
back to you.
Well, there you have it. Yes, Rob Bellinger, Dirk Ducharme with Olympus's CIX90 technical cleanliness inspection system. There you go. Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Rob, for doing that. All right, well, we're getting towards the end of our show. We want to remind you, of course, we have a webinar coming up for you on a Thursday, this coming Thursday, June 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's a little bit of a different time than we normally do our webinars. 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Again, Dan Jacobs is going to be presenting, and Dirk is going to be hosting. So keep an eye on your email for that invitation, and go ahead and sign up for that.
As you can tell, Dan's a very good presenter, so you're going to want to. This should affect everybody. I mean, everybody's got a quality department. You all got to make the sale to your upper level there, and why they should be supporting quality and supporting your program. So
That's right.
Want to attend that. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot. That's the end of our show for today.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Dan Jacob, for joining us via Skype, Rob Bellinger for coming down and giving us a great presentation on Tech Corner, and thank you all for being here. We'll see you next week for another big week at QDD, and we'll be back here on Friday the 17th with another episode of Quality Digest Live. So we'll see you then.
So long.
Bye.
Four, three, two, one, fire.